All right. I've now finished chapters 19 through 27 of A Game of Thrones. And this section of the book, I gotta say, felt very strange to me, but in a good way. Because it almost feels like two completely different kinds of story are happening at the same time. On one hand, you have the politics of King's Landing, conspiracies, investigations, secret heirs, poisonings. And I gotta be honest, that part of the story is a little hard for me to wade through. But at the same time, outside of King's Landing, at Winterfell and across the sea with Dany, the story suddenly becomes much more mythic. There's dreams, there's prophecies, there's old stories. And as a Tolkien fan, that part of the book is much more my speed. And the more I read, the more I'm starting to think that the politics may drive the plot, but the myths might drive the destiny of the story. But first, let's take a look at the political side. Ned continues investigating the death of the former Hand of the King, Jon Arryn. And what he uncovers is very interesting. He discovers that an illegitimate son of King Robert, who's working as an apprentice, seems to be somehow connected to whatever conspiracy the Lannisters are hiding. Now let's combine that with something we already know. Cersei and Jaime are having an affair, which Bran saw. If the children are not actually his blood, if the king's children are not actually his blood, then that changes everything. Because suddenly the king's illegitimate children might actually have a stronger claim to the throne than the royal heirs themselves, because they're not actually of his blood. If that secret got out, it would do several things. First of all, it would destroy the queen. She would no longer, essentially, it wouldn't be good to find out that the queen was having an affair and her children aren't actually the king's children. That wouldn't be good for her. So if Jon Arryn discovered the truth, that would give someone a very good reason to kill him. There's also an interesting moment when Ned speaks with Pycelle about poison. Ned says poison is a woman's weapon, and Pycelle replies, women, cravens, and then it gives an ellipses, like he's hesitant to say it, eunuchs. And that seemed to be a pretty direct warning about Varys, who they call a spider. And that got me thinking, if Jon Arryn was poisoned, there are then two obvious suspects that are emerging here. Well, maybe three, like Cersei or Jaime or both, or Varys. But if Varys did it on Cersei's orders, that would actually make a lot of sense politically. Because if the plot were uncovered and Varys were caught, who would people believe? A eunuch or the queen? He would be the perfect scapegoat if things went sideways. But while all this political intrigue is happening, we get one of the most important quotes in the book so far, at least to me. Ser Jorah says to Dany, the common people pray for rain, healthy children, and a summer that never ends. It is no matter to them if the High Lords play their Game of Thrones, so long as they are left in peace. And I think that's a very important quote because that's the first time the title of the book appears in the story. And so that makes me think it's important. Because what Jorah is saying is that the Game of Thrones is something only the powerful care about. The common people just want to live their lives. And actually, that's very much like things are today. The only people that really care about political machinations, even today, are the people involved in politics. Most people just want to be able to go to their jobs, make some money, come home, and do things that they enjoy. And they want the government to leave them alone as much as possible. Um, but so I identify with that quote a lot. But the powerful are obsessed with this political game. And that obsession might blind them to something much bigger. And that something is the myths, the dreams, the stories. Because outside the politics, something very different is happening. With both Dany and Bran, the story suddenly becomes full of dreams and myths. And honestly, this part feels much more Tolkienian. Dany has a dream about a black and scarlet dragon, just like one of the eggs she received as a wedding present. When she wakes up, she touches the egg and it feels warm, but she dismisses it as being warmed by the sun. But then she remembers something interesting. In the East, magic is said to still exist. There are manticores and basilisks and warlocks and spell singers and their arts in this place Ashai, is that it? Or Ashai or Ashay? Anyway. And she asks a very simple question. Why shouldn't there be dragons too? So I have to say now, at this point, I'm really convinced that those eggs are not mere stone. They're not fossils. They're not fossilized. They are going to hatch. They have to hatch. You can't be doing this to me. At some point, they're going to hatch. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. But then we also get one of the strangest myths in the book so far. A girl from Lys or Lice tells Dany a story that once there were two moons, but one came too close to the sun and it cracked open like an egg, and dragons came out. Now, obviously, the characters treat this as a fable, and I don't think Martin literally means dragons came out from the moon. But myths almost always contain some kernel of truth. They're like parables. They're symbolic, and the point of the story seems clear to me. Dragons once existed, and they may return. But meanwhile, back in Winterfell, Bran is also surrounded by stories. Old Nan is telling him tales when he complains about being interrupted. And she gives one of my favorite lines in the book so far. She says, "Stories wait, my little lord, and when you come back to them, why, there they are. Visitors are not so patient, and oftentimes they bring stories of their own." And the visitor turns out to be Tyrion. And Tyrion gives Bran advice that might allow him to uh, that might allow him to be elevated and actually fly like in his dream. The advice is to be given that they should a give him a yearling horse or pony and help the horse learn Bran's movement, behavior, the way he speaks and whistles and clicks his tongue, and uh and 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 train the horse from very young. And Tyrion does this not because Tyrion is particularly noble, but because Jon, the illegitimate son of Ned, asked him to. And because he says he has a soft spot for cripples, bastards, and broken things. And that moment actually makes me like Tyrion even more because he understands suffering. I don't think that Tyrion was the one that gave the knife to the assassin guy. I think it must have been someone trying to set Tyrion up. Probably, obviously, the obvious suspect, Jaime or maybe Cersei, but I think Jaime might be the more obvious one to do it. But I think they're trying to set Tyrion up. So my big theory, here's the big thought I'm starting to have about the story. The Lannisters believe in politics, power, manipulation, ambition. The Lannisters are Slytherins. They're playing the Game of Thrones. But the story keeps returning to dreams, myths, and old stories. There's Bran's dreams and old Nan's stories. There's Dany's the dreams that she's told, the dreams that she has and the stories that she's told. There's the ancient prophecies. There's dragon myths. And I have a feeling those things matter far more than the political players realize. Because if the dreams mean anything, then there may be something bigger at work. If they have meaning, meaning's information, and information comes from intelligence. Something beyond the political game. Something like providence. Maybe the dreams are meaningless. Maybe they're just a result of bad food that the people had before bed. But I don't think so. And if the Lannisters ignore the mythic side of the world, that might eventually be their downfall. So, right now, the story feels split between two worlds. The world of politics and the world of myth. And as a Tolkien reader, I can't help feeling that the myths are pointing toward something bigger. Also, in this section, we were introduced to Samwell Tarly, who I actually made a whole separate video about. So if you want to hear my take on Samwell and why I think he's more like Neville Longbottom than Samwise Gamgee, you can check out that video too. But as always, no spoilers in the comments because I'm still trying to figure out which part of the story is actually going to win. The Game of Thrones or the dreams. But let me know which one you like better. The mythic side, the stories, the dreams, or all the political machinations going on with the Lannisters and everyone else at the Capitol. But anyway, I'll see y'all next time.